Yes, a very warm welcome to the panelists on New Age Marketing, Careers Around the Globe. We have Soundari, Sharda, and Stephanie, and the moderator, Vafika. So, moderator, over to you. You can take it forward.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. A very warm welcome to all our eminent panelists and audiences. I am absolutely thrilled to be part of today's International Symposium. Hi everyone, I am Wafika Sheikh from BTU and take immense pride in introducing our speakers today who are globally located and have joined us today from different parts of the world and at different time zones to be part of this event. A big thank you to all. Now we begin introducing three very impactful leaders who are with us as panel members. I'm excited to introduce you to our first panel speaker who is joining us today from Dubai, Sharda Agarwal. Sharda is the co-founder of Sepilica. She is healthcare professional with experience in chronic disease reversal. She is a mentor to startups and businesses. She is an entrepreneur twice over with first venture bought by a multinational. She is skilled in marketing and branding and an independent director of boards across organizations. We are honored to have you with us today, Shada.
Thank you.
Our next panel
Lovely to be
member.
here.
Thank you. Our next panel member is Sondri Mukherjee, joins us from Hong Kong. Sondri is the founding partner of Resolve, a leadership consultancy firm focusing on business storytelling, future work skills, and transformation projects. She works with leaders and teams to harness the power of stories in a business context to engage, inspire, and influence, thus bringing humanity to the workplace. Having worked for over 25 years in India, Middle East, and Hong Kong with Unilever, ANZ Greenlace, and Tissot, Sondri has an insider's view on the challenges that organizations and teams face, and this drives her passion. He has a BCom degree, is a cost accountant and MBA in finance from IIM Calcutta. So glad to have you with us on our panel, Sondri.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Our next panel member is Stephanie Witt, who joins us from the US. It is early morning 4 a.m. there for her, and we can't be any happier to have her with us today. Stephanie works with Thomas Jefferson's University. She has vast experience in the field of building transformation, that is, international engagement programs in more than 40 countries around the world for Princeton University, the University of Chicago, and Rotary International. I'm sure you will be as excited as I am today to hear our speakers talk to us and share and enrichen us through some of their most wonderful experiences today. Once again, a warm welcome to all of you here. Before we begin, I would like our audiences to pose questions to our speakers. Please keep them coming throughout the live event on our chat boxes. We'll pick the two best from the lot. Now we begin. So, first question. Hi Shraddha. Hope you're doing wonderful today. I would like to open the panel with you.
Thank you, Afika.
Shraddha.
Doing very well.
Thank you, ma'am. Shraddha, you have a vast experiences with startups and you're an entrepreneur. There are many startups today with a very good product but are clueless on how to promote their product or build their brand. What advice would you have for them, and what are the appropriate platforms one can begin with for branding?
So, 50% of my career has been in startups and in entrepreneurship, but 50% has been in brands and marketing. So I'm going to give you a joint perspective to this question. So if you're a startup with whatever product or service, the first thing you need to understand is what is this product? Is it a product? Who are you targeting rather? Am I targeting a B2B customer, which is your customer is an institution or an organization? Or am I targeting a B2C consumer? So the actual end user of your product. Now, depending upon who you're targeting, your choice of market, your choice of how you're going to be launching will come from that. So if you're a B2B product, so let's assume for a moment that you've launched, let's say a tech product, which helps somebody to collate emails, WhatsApp messages, Facebook Messenger messages, all on a single platform. And that's your product. And it's an app that you've launched. And you're wanting to sell it to corporates. So that's your B2B platform. Whereas if, for example, you're somebody who's, let's say, launched organic hair care products for consumers, that's a B2C. You're actually trying to reach out to the end consumer. Now, in a B2B situation, trying to figure out who you're going to, where you're going to, or how you're going to market your product, what you really need to do is to look at who are the potential buyers. Is it business platforms? Is it marketplaces? Is it, in this case, it would be a corporate because you're trying to sell a technology product and your end users are likely to be corporates. So it's very important, for example, in B2B marketing, for you to be able to understand your audience, be able to network, be able to approach corporates. And because you're a startup, you may not be able to approach corporates directly, in which case I would say, please network. Now you can tell me, listen, I'm a college graduate. Where is the networking opportunity that I have? I have not built years and years of work experience behind me. But there are plenty of networks. The first thing you will do is to look at your alumni network. So if it's VTU, please look at the VTU alumni to see who is sitting there, who could be your potential, somebody you could reach out to. The second one is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a fabulous platform. You reach out to people. I have people cold calling me and messaging me. And so long as you have a very professional looking personal profile on LinkedIn, a very professional looking website or whatever is your public presence on the internet, you will be sure that people will reach out to you. But it's hard and it's long because it's little bit of a spray and pray. So be prepared to endure that. So networking is very critical. Trying to look at marketplaces is very important if you're a B2B, if your product is a B2B. On the other hand, if you're directly speaking to consumer, it's relatively easy because all of you are familiar with this. It's Google, Facebook, Instagram, but it's damn difficult. It is so crowded and it is so competitive. So it takes me to the second point, which is you need to understand where are they and what are they looking for. What do I mean by where are they? So look at my business, which is Sepalika. We help, our focus is women's health, and we're talking about chronic illness. So it's a slightly more serious category. One of the things that I figured that my audience lies more in Facebook, which is, look at the panel of speakers out here. So all of us who are 35, 40 plus, we're more likely to be on Facebook. However, let's say I were to be a pure fitness or let's say gym, somebody who helps you build muscles, then I know my audience is younger, in which case I will pick Instagram as my preferred choice because Instagram by nature has a far younger profile. So my advice to you is figure out where is your audience sitting, and then you will have to match the platform and reach out to your audience on that platform.
Thanks, Sharda. You shared some very good suggestions and ideas that can benefit all those listening to you. Sondri, I'm so excited to know from you about business storytelling, and if you could elaborate more and tell us about it, I'm sure it will be interesting to tell our viewers how did you conceptualize the idea of TESOL and the key driving force to become an entrepreneur.
Thank you, Vafika. Namaskara, and thank you, Vice Chancellor Karisidapa, Dr. Deepti, other members of the VTU team for the opportunity for us to be with you as you celebrate this milestone.
And it's an honor and privilege, of course, like I was telling us in the group, to be in the same flyer as Sudha Murthy ji. So we are very excited. And thanks, Madhura, for creating a platform for us all to learn and grow together. And Abba, for your meticulous organizing. Without you, we couldn't have been here together. So while I'm in Hong Kong, in me is very much a Chennai girl that I am. I'm remembering an incident that happened more than 30 years ago when the head of the commerce department of my college, Ethraj College, Dr. Nirmala Prasad, came into our classroom and asked who wanted to volunteer to help for a conference that Madras Management Association was handling. I immediately put my hand up. It was at a 5-star hotel, Adaya Park, Sheraton. I'd never stepped into a 5-star hotel ever before in my life. So I went there with stars in my eyes and my heart in my mouth. And I was blown away by the place, big chandeliers, plush carpet, those chairs where they put the red satin bows around them. I was not going to be in a panel, or I was not going to be sitting in any of those chairs at that time. All I had to do was handle the registration desk. So help out giving out the name tags, ensure notepads and pens were there on the table. But that gave me an opportunity to be with some of the industry experts and hear from them. I remember that there was this lady who had just joined that company at that time. The company was called Tractors and Farm Equipments, TAFE. Her name is Mallika Srinivasan. She's now the CEO. And she said that you don't need to love money to run a business. You need a dream to build an institution, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing now. It was 30 years back. But that made me really aspire to, at that time, I thought what was important, which was to be on a cover of a business magazine. But it also got me started thinking more about being in business and what running business means. And we talk a lot about gender pay gap, and that is something that I'm sure Women's Studies Center will be looking at. But the more important gap is the network gap. A weaker network means lesser job opportunities. It also means that from the company point of view, the companies are not getting the best of candidates. So you might have the right skills, but you might lack the right connections. And that is a problem that is really holding back women. And I think forums like these really help overcome that gap. And you need both inspiring stories from people like Sudha Murthy ji, Mallika Srinivasan, all the mentors who've been talking yesterday and today. And also you need nourishing environment, which is what the Women's Studies Center and Aspire for Her really give to all of us. And so really, back to your question, Vafika, I know I talked a little bit because I'm really passionate about these networks that are being created. So when we used to work in organizations, we would go for training programs and experience, wow, such a great program. And then we would come back to work and it was business as usual. So we got thinking, how can we really create an organization where you would embed the learning and the application in the session itself? So we started behavioral skills programs with a lot of experiential learning, research into the, what the participants want, how do you calculate the metrics? And then slowly over a period of time, we found that our clients' needs were changing. And hence, so were we. Our clients were telling us that, our presentations from the sales teams are very boring. We are yawning through the presentations. Nobody wants to listen to them. The leaders are not memorable. They're not inspiring the teams. The leaders are talking in abstract terms and people cannot connect to them. So it actually reminded me of this scene from the movie. I'm sure a lot of you have seen Three Idiots. That it is loosely said to be based on Sonam Wangchuk, who's an Indian engineer, innovator, and educator. And I remember this one scene from that where there is a definition of a mission being discussed. And one of the very bookish, rote learning person, he calls machine, and I'm going to just read it. A machine is any combination of bodies so connected that their relative motions are constrained by means of which force and motion can be transmitted and modified, as a screw and a nut or a lever arranged. And I'm getting bored as I'm reading this. So I would have stopped it. So sometimes we end up speaking like this. And this is even more so in organizations where people say, talking about deep collaboration and connection. Let's optimize operating practices. Let's enhance productive integration. What is enhanced culture of innovation? And people just glaze over. The teams just don't listen. Instead, imagine as a contrast, if you define a machine as something that reduces human effort. Anything that simplifies or saves time is a machine. It's a warm day today, which is not, but press a button, the fan goes on. Fan is a machine. So if you really think of it in some very simple terms, you become relatable to people and people listen to you. Because otherwise, if people don't understand and you talk in abstract language, they are going to make up their own stories. And today, with all the social media, with all the problem of choice, we have Amazon Prime, we have Netflix, we can't even decide what show to watch. There's so much of noise and so much of action. How do you cut through the noise, especially in a business circumstance, to make a point? How do you connect to people? How do you build relationships? And that is where storytelling comes in place in business. It makes it really easy to understand, remember, and retell. And every human being is a natural storyteller. We just sometimes tend to stick with facts, but if we were to wrap it in context and deliver it with emotion, we will connect. And any place you want to make a point, if you share it with an example, you will become memorable. And I remember some of the examples from yesterday when Neerja was talking about her daughter, to say how it is important to take initiative, or when Jaya was talking about the fish example and the tail folding in a saucepan. I'm sure this is something all of us will remember, and remember the point that was linked to it as well. So let me just link it up to one example, especially for the students, in terms of how it is important to be persistent and solve problems. And Neerja talked about this as a life skill for women yesterday. So in March this year, a 15-year-old schoolgirl called Jyoti Kumari was sent by her mother to New Delhi to bring her injured father back. And Jyoti lived with her mother in Bihar, which is about 1,200 kilometers away from Delhi. Jyoti's dad used to be a rickshaw driver in Delhi, and he was the sole breadwinner. But he had an accident and he couldn't walk. So Jyoti reaches Delhi and finds her dad, but the COVID lockdown is already in place, which means the trains are already shut down. With limited money and food, they are both stranded in Delhi. And to add to the complication, they are evicted from the place that they are living because they couldn't pay the rent. So you're stuck in Delhi, no money, very little money, no food, about to be evicted. And Jyoti is wondering, what should I do? I've promised my mother that I'll bring my dad home. So she decides to buy a bicycle. She has never owned or ridden a bicycle before, but she decides to take the ride back to Bihar, 1,200 kilometers, with her dad on a parcel tray on the back of the bike. And it was an old bike. So she set off relying on the people as they met on the way for food. It took her about 10 days, but she did that drive and she got her dad back home safely. So when you're really put in a creative desperation state, you come up with a solution. And if I were to say that, you don't stand out because you're smart, everybody around you will be smart. You'll stand out because you persevere and you handle the challenges and learn from them. I'm going to just stop now and ask you, Wafika, maybe I'll put you on a spot here. Will you remember Jyoti's story tomorrow? And will you remember the message that it's important to solve problems and persevere?
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
So that is the power of stories to make a point, and it is an immensely valuable business tool. And we don't use it often enough in business. And that is our mission at TESOL, to work on it.
Sonri, we learned so much from you today. Thank you for those insights. Good morning, Stephanie. From all of us from India, Sonri just shared insights into business storytelling. You are a global citizen with great exposure working across multicultural setups. How do you communicate effectively with people with cultural differences and be sensitive to different communication styles and attitudes to work ensuring that everyone understands the common goals?
Good morning. For those who are on my side of the planet, I think there are few. So good afternoon, good evening to all of you. First of all, I want to thank Madhura for inviting me to be on this panel, this important event. I have, as she knows, great admiration for her. This platform is very important, not solely in India, but I think all over the world. As we know, women are still treated as a minority, even in the United States, as you know, it may sound surprising. But anyway, I want to put in context my experience. I'm probably the only person on this panel who has not worked in the corporate world, so to speak. My entire career has been in higher education. So in that context, I've not worked with clients. I've worked with students, with parents, with prospective students, with faculty, with staff, and those are very different networks, you know, to begin with. I think I'm going to come back to the importance of storytelling, and I think in the context of communicating effectively across the world, it's not so much about telling the story; it's about listening. You can be thrown in a room with, you know, people from 20 different countries, and they're not necessarily going to relate to what you're saying. They're going to relate to what they're hearing. But also that means they're going to relate to how they want to tell you their story. I think that it's really about shifting the paradigm. You know, in the context of selling something, yes, you want to tell the story of your organization, you know. But in the context of communicating effectively, first of all, you have to listen. I think that's the most important thing. I think that's also the only way to make sure that the people in front of you, whether they are parents, alumni, your own staff, can relate to the common goal. Think about it this way. When you know, many of us get all these webinar invitations, and when we're able to meet in person, we get all these events invitation. What is it that we react to? We react to how exclusive the event seems to be, and also to the importance, the richness of the content of the event. And that's what people want to get out of the way you communicate with them. I think that's really, really important. And again, it's not about so much telling your story, it's about listening to them. I think that's really, really important. I want to give you an example. As Wafika said, I'm a citizen of the world. I'm originally from France, lived in India and Canada, and then in the United States. I consider India my second homeland. Madhura knows, I think. And many moons ago, I lived in Bombay before it was called Mumbai. And I worked for Air India. And I went to get my first paycheck in the big Air India building. And went to a really upper floor. And, you know, I was a 22-year-old brat from Paris who thought she knew everything about the world. And I entered this big room with a lot of people, a lot of desks. And I'm directed to this young man across the room. And I'm thinking, again, the 22-year-old brat, oh my God, this is going to take forever. And I go to this young man and I see all these piles of folders everywhere. And I give him my name and he takes one folder, opens it at the right page and gives me my check. I think that was the biggest lesson in humility and in also understanding that to be able to communicate with others, you need to unlearn what you think you know about the world. You know, you have to Just put aside everything, all the presumptions, and again, listen. I cannot tell you how many times I've traveled to India with people who had never been there, and it would tell me, "Oh, nothing works in this country," which is what really enraged me and still does today. And my big speech to them says, "No, it does work. Again, unlearn what you think you learn. Everything works. It just works differently." So I think, coming back to your question, communicating effectively is really unlearning what you think you know and listening to others. It doesn't matter whether the people are from, Shanghai or Bombay or Santiago in Chile. It's, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the people.
Thanks, Stephanie. You have shared with us some very important aspects which will be helpful for students who will be entering the corporate world in multinational setups. Sharda, coming next to you. Digital marketing is trending today, and it's great to get a bunch of clicks or page views. But how can the effectiveness of the content be judged to know whether it's really engaging and mobilizing the audiences?
You've asked me a nice question, Wafika, because I have been down that path and paid a big price for it. So I started Sepalika back in 2016. At that time, we set ourselves up as a purely content platform. And the idea is I wanted to tell the world that all chronic illnesses like diabetes or cholesterol or polycystic ovarian syndrome or obesity or asthma, all these conditions can be reversed. And unfortunately, no doctor tells you that. And they can be reversed because most of them are triggered by lifestyle. So all you needed was the correct lifestyle, which is the right nutrition, getting your right vitamins in, sleep, stress management, and you can reverse. And there is increasing research on that front.
Sharda,
so as a content,
I'll interrupt you for a minute. Your face is not fully visible, so you might want to go back a little. Yes,
lot, is it okay now?
Lot better. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
A little back. If you go a little back, then I think you'll be able to see your whole face. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes. Perfect.
So as a content platform or a content website, what is the number one metric all of us would look at? It's traffic, right? How many people are visiting my website in a month? Or it's page views, which is how many pages are being looked at on my website. And then you're really worried about what is called as a bounce rate, which is bounce rate being defined as a certain minimum time within which people exit your website. So if someone comes in less than a few seconds, they exit, it's called a bounce rate. And we all know that Google really doesn't like bounce rates. So what was I told? At that time, we were funded by a venture capitalist firm. And I was told, listen, you're a content website. You're going to make money through revenues, advertising revenues, which means you need traffic. So my question was, how much traffic? Oh, traffic in the millions was what I was told. So I said, okay. So we started getting off to do this. And I told my my SEO guy, SEO being search engine optimization, I said, okay, every morning when I walk into the office, here is this whiteboard, and I want you to put down what is the traffic that we got as of last evening. So coming day one. So I said, our target should be at least 1 million. So day one is about 5. Day 3, we've gone up to 7. Day 5, I remember we've gone to 18 or 19. And I'm like, at the end of month 1, we were some 94 or 98. And I said, I can't believe this. 1 million and we're still at 98. We're not even hit 3 digits. And then I call up my VC, frantically, and he says, it's always a hockey stick. So there is an inflection point after which you will shoot up. So then I said, okay, I had no idea how to do this. So I sat on a tech guy and we really worked hard. And over the next, I think in less than a year, we had hit 500,000 in traffic for Sepalika. And I was thrilled because I was told for a content company based out of India, which was doing some serious content, which is on diseases, for us to get 500,000 in traffic each month was, I thought we were the cat's whiskers, okay? And then I'm sitting back. So then my VC says, okay, now where's the money? I said, what money? He says, where's the revenue? I said, I thought we were going to be focusing on, traffic. And I was tracking, by the way, I was tracking my bounce rates, my page views. We're all doing well. And that's when it hit home hard. What is the point in bringing traffic if you're not going to do anything with the traffic? So that's when I realized this whole concept. So my VC then introduced me to this whole concept of a vanity metric. A vanity metric being something, it's just for your vanity, which is it pampers your ego. So Sharda, great show, for getting 500,000. But guess what? It ain't doing nothing for your business. So go and get me the bottom line. And that's when I realized that you can't be looking at page views. You can't be looking at traffic to your website. I'm not saying that you should not be looking at it, but that's not the only thing. You need to decide what is it that you want your business to do. And for me, it was getting advertising revenue. If you are let's say if you are Falguni Nair who runs Nykaa, for her, it's about getting transactions, right? So you've got to look at what is your business objective. If, for example, Madhura runs Aspire for her as a foundation. She wants to reach as many people as possible. At this point in time, she's not looking at advertising. She's not selling anything on her site. But she needs to build a community, and she's doing it through emails. For Madhura and her team at Aspire for her, email opening rates mean nothing. She can get a 20 to 25% email opening rate, but it doesn't stop there. For Madhura, she wants people to click on something on that email and do an action. It may be join her Facebook page. It may be to agree to participate in this VTO conference for which she sent out an email. So do you know that at 20% email opening rate, your email click-through rate can be no more than 1.5 to 2%. Of the 20%. So you can imagine if Madhura were just focusing on opening rate, she'll be nowhere. So as a person who, as somebody who's running a startup or any business, or even as a part of an organization, when you are looking, it's important to look beyond these metrics to look at what is it that makes sense for me. And if you're running a content website or let's say if you're running any website, you have only really two metrics. Number one, you need to look at conversion rate. Conversion means a conversion to an action that you want. If it's Madhura who's running Aspire for her the conversion will be clicking through to becoming a member on her foundation. If you are Nykaa or if you're Amazon, it's clicking to convert for them to convert into a transaction, paying you. So the only thing you need to look at is beyond that is to look at your conversion rate. The second thing you need to look at is customer acquisition cost, which is what is the price at which you got that conversion. So if, for example, let's say I am, as a startup, I am selling shoes and my shoes on an average are priced as 1,000 rupees. For getting the actual conversions, if I spend around 1,200 rupees per customer to acquire them as my end customer, look at it this way. They've paid me 1,000 rupees and I've spent 1,200 rupees acquiring them. It doesn't make sense. It only makes sense if you are venture capital funded, where you got big bucks and your VC is telling you, go burn the money, which unfortunately is not the case for most of us. So as a digital marketer, as somebody who's starting out the business, two things I'd like you to look at if you're running a website. Number one is your conversion rate. And the second metric that you look at is your customer acquisition cost. Now, the other question that I think what Wafika said, which is that let's say you're somebody who's running Facebook, you're doing activity on Facebook, you're doing activity on YouTube. There, as a person who's on digital, what you should be really looking at are views. But then views can be very misleading. Again, I remember one of the first views. So we put out a lot of videos for Sepalika on both Facebook and Instagram. And I was so thrilled. My first video got some 600, 800 views on Facebook. And at that time, I remember I've never been on a public platform like that. But today I'm wiser. I know that 800 means nothing because guess what? Do you know how Facebook actually counts a view? For Facebook, the moment you spend 3 seconds and just 3 seconds on a video, it's a view. But here's the smarter thing. You know what Facebook does? It has an autoplay option for the video as it appears on your newsfeed, which means you don't need to do anything. It will record, even if you pause or even if you're scrolling and you see it and it's 3 seconds there, wow, you've got a view. And it means nothing. So what I'd recommend that you do is Facebook has always something called insights. So when you get into Facebook Insights, it will tell you how many of those views came from people who watched for more than 30 seconds? 30 seconds is half a minute. It's nothing in today's world, right? But that's what you need to look at. When somebody like me, who's putting out a lot of informative videos, for me, it's important that they see for 30 seconds. And you know what I realized? 97% of my audience wasn't watching for more than 30 seconds. So I had only 3% of that 800 guys who were watching me. So it's very important that you see the right metric, which is 30-second views. The other thing that you can also see on Facebook is clicks. So it might appear on somebody's timeline, but when somebody clicks it, that's when you know they have intent. So, or they have engaged with your videos. So it's far more important to look at engagement scores than just views. Similar with YouTube. Now with YouTube, again, what happens is that for the first set of views, you'll get, I remember I upload a video on YouTube, and literally 5 minutes later, I've seen 60 views. And I'm saying, where on earth did this come from? I'm like, Sharda is not so popular that, in 5 minutes, there are 60 people who've seen it. And that's when I realized, even when I hit the refresh button, just to check if my video is appearing correctly, end to end, I figured YouTube gives it to me as a view, but YouTube is very smart. After a certain point, and you're obviously not going to do it because of YouTube algorithm, they will stop giving you that credit. Again, YouTube not only looks at 30-second views, but it looks at how is the video that Sharda put out really something that somebody wants to see. So it's very important to look beyond views. And therefore, what are you going to look at? So if it's video views, you're going to look at, it's critical to look at likes. It's critical to look at dislikes. And remember, always look at what is the pattern of your ratio of dislikes to likes. Have a certain benchmark, ensure that it doesn't cross that. It's important to look at comments. Very important for you to immediately answer the comments, because Facebook and YouTube track how quickly you respond. What kind of shares are you getting? And these are what I would define as true engagement scores. And given that, there are literally millions and zillions of views being uploaded videos being uploaded every day on YouTube and Facebook, please ensure simple things like your thumbnail, your description, your title is very important. And YouTube is very smart. Please don't do those clickbait titles. They catch you like that. So, and they constantly keep changing their algorithm. And therefore, you've got to also keep track of these algorithms. So I remember a very famous, and I'm not going to name that website, but a very famous website who had on Facebook 9 million fans. And they were building themselves as a content platform in health. And their objective was, their business model was what I had initially, which is revenues coming through advertising. 9 million and 40 million visitors each month on Google. And guess what happened? One fine day, Facebook decided, I'm going to change my algorithm. I don't think I should be favoring brands. I should be favoring individuals. And that's it. Virtually all of those 9 million visitors that they had gathered just went. So it's important that it's not important as much to see how many followers I have, how many fans do I have. It's more important to see how you're engaging with these guys. And the saddest part is today, Facebook no longer gives organic traffic. It's virtually impossible to get organic traffic on Facebook. The only way is for you to start, because they want you to spend. They want money. Zuckerberg is very smart. So you're better off promoting or boosting some of your posts rather than running after building a certain, 1 lakh fan base or so many followers on Instagram or Facebook. So whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram or any social media, as a digital marketer or as an entrepreneur, you should focus on engagement, which is likes, shares, comments, rather than focusing on the top line numbers.
Thanks, Sharda. Those were some very interesting insights. Stephanie, you have run international engaging programs in 40 strategic countries. Please share with us what are the effective engagement techniques you use to manage client relationships, especially across the globe.
Bhavika, I think Stephanie was having some network problem. So I think she's going to get back in a bit. So maybe if you can get Saundari's question in first and then get Stephanie in.
Yes, sure, ma'am. Sondri, we have been reading everywhere how during this pandemic, COVID-19, many organizations are restructuring their organizations to make it more cost effective and bringing a change. And change is not easy in any setup. What message would you give the employees?
Yeah, it's such a relevant question, Wafika. My heart definitely goes out to the people who've lost their jobs. And it's not an easy time anywhere in the world to, be through a change. So I want to share two perspectives, one from an organizational and an employer point of view as well, which is showing more empathy while taking tough decisions and taking the ecosystem with you. So we heard about Airbnb in May when they laid off a lot of people in the organization. What they did was try to create a very good severance package for the employees. They ensured that the people who had equity in the organization were eligible to just hold on to it. They ensured healthcare facilities were available even to the people who left the organization. They created a whole job support panel. They created an alumni talent directory, alumni placement team, so where people could engage and try and find more jobs. So I think one of the things is keeping empathy while you take tough decisions. And the other part from an organizational point of view is taking your ecosystem with you. And I remember this, and this is back to my South India roots. In December 2011, there was a cyclone called Thane, which hit the southern coast. EID Parry, which is a sugar company in South India, their whole supply system, the people who were supplying sugar canes to them, the fields were totally destroyed. And not only that, EID, some of their factories were also destroyed. And I think this is really relevant, especially with all the things that are happening with the farmer movement in India now. What EID Parry did is they bought all the uprooted sugarcane and also the damaged pre-harvest crop from the farmers. And, the damaged sugarcanes don't produce great juice. The juice yield is very low. But even then, even though their factory was also equally damaged, EID Parry did something very strange. They paid the farmers the same rate for the damaged cane as they would pay for the good normal cane. And they incurred a loss of 45 million rupees. Why would any company even do that? And because they did that, because they believed in the concept of a collective, which goes beyond the factory and the employees. They said the suppliers, the poor sugarcane farmers with small landholdings, they are all part of our ecosystem. And the farmers, because of this, have been tremendously loyal to the company, and which leads to the fact that ultimately EID Parry outperforms all its competition to date. So that's from the organizational perspective. You take a tough decision, but how do you take your ecosystem with you? And from the employees or even student standpoint, how do you take ownership at this time? And I think that's what really defines you when you're going through a change. And I'm sure Dr. Deepthi will really like this incident, and you must have read it in the papers. In June 2020, there was a teacher called Shyam Kishore Singh Gandhi. He was a headmaster in a school in Jharkhand. And he was trying to find out how his 200 odd students who didn't have smartphones could still continue classes amidst the lockdown. And what he did was amazing. He just organized several loudspeakers to be put up on the trees, on the streets, on the walls, anywhere where they could get access and continue the so-called online learning. So, smartphones, we say, oh, no smartphone, I can't learn, no online, Wi-Fi problem. No. How do you make learning really happen? And in his class, it was students from, class 1 to class 8. Out of the 246 students, 204 students didn't have smartphones. So it's not to say, oh, we have a problem, there's a change, it's an issue, what do we do? But it's really going beyond that. And based on what he did, the district education officer, Poonam Kumari, she tried to translate it to all the 2,300 government schools in that area. So not only have you created a change for your students, you've also brought out a role model that the whole district could adopt. And taking, as a teacher, you've led the way. You've not assumed that, oh, this is a change, this is a problem, I can't do anything. We also heard about Jyoti's example of how she was resourceful. Similarly, students all over the world, and I remember this boy, Avik Schiffman, he was a high school student in Mercer Island in Washington, and this was in January 2020, when COVID was just happening, and there was not enough data on what was happening around the world. People kept hearing bits and pieces from Wuhan, China, something is happening, but people didn't even have a dashboard. Now, today, if you want, you can tap into any government, COVID live, you'll get data of everything. At that time, there wasn't anything. So this 17-year-old boy, he created a dashboard, which was as good as something that World Health Organization can create. It created live information up to date, and they used this model later on to really build on it. So you can say, oh, why me? Why this has happened? When any change happens. But if not now, then when? And if not you, then who? Take ownership for your learning, for making a change. And, as you embark on this journey, I read this really nice book by this person called Scott Hartley. And he says that missions will keep getting better. AI is going to get better. Tech is going to get better. As humans, what we can do is only be better versions of ourselves. So be more human. You bring digital to the fore. Technology is very important. It's an enabler. Bring digital to the fore, but stay human to the core. And bring on whatever you're doing by taking ownership. And that's my, suggestion for all of us to embrace.
Thank you, Saundari, for the insights. Sharda, what are some strategies that can help women achieve a more prominent role in marketing?
I think it was about a few weeks ago, I was mentoring somebody from the Aspire for Her Foundation. And this was a young girl who was looking for career advice in marketing. And as we began talking, one of the first questions I asked her was to say, what is marketing? And I actually figured that to her, marketing just meant, it was just advertising. And it was nothing beyond that. And that's when I realized that a lot of people don't understand what marketing really is. Marketing is a vast space. If you want a career in marketing, and it's fantastic for both women and men, but a career in marketing can span everything from, at one end, let's say you want to get into the area of brand management. What is brand management? You're actually getting into organizations where you're building and creating brands. Or you could be in that a little, down that value chain, where you could say, you could get into advertising. So somebody has created a brand. You are someone who's going to say, okay, I'm going to take that brand to its end consumer. So you get into the space of advertising. Or you could be further down that chain to say, okay, brand has been created by somebody. Somebody's created the advertising or the communication for it, but it has to finally reach. How do you know whether you're going to use social media, television, outdoors, etc.? You can get into media. That's again a part of marketing. Or you can say, okay, not this downstream, but I want to go even upstream. You can get into the space of market research, which is actually informing the brand manager what information or what brands to build, what businesses to get into, what insights or information you get about consumers, so you can get into market research. Or again, come to this side of the line. So there's media, but in media, there's everything. As I said, you could be advertising on radio today, or tomorrow you could get into digital marketing. So you can get into digital media versus offline or traditional media. So the space of getting into marketing is vast and it's huge. But if you want to get into marketing, there's one fundamental thing that you need to have, which is you need to be interested in people. Marketing is just about understanding consumers and getting whatever you have, your product or your service, creating it, and then getting somebody to buy it. So to get into marketing at fundamental level, you should be really understanding, you should be really interested in understanding people. And then the other thing to get ahead in marketing is, and this is very important, right? So don't just decide marketing. Also look at, what kind of person are you? What piques your interest? Are you somebody who loves numbers, right? Very comfortable with Excel sheets and numbers? Then maybe areas like quantitative market research, the area of analytics in digital marketing, even brand management, because as a brand manager, you are expected to look at the P&L of the brand. So those are spaces that you could look at. However, you may say, you know what, I love marketing, I love consumers, numbers, baba chhod do, that's not for me. You can still be there in marketing and get into the more creative space, or the more, especially with digital media, you can create content, you can get into advertising, you can actually get into even public relations. So marketing, the fantastic thing about marketing is that whether you're a quant person, whether you're somebody who's more comfortable with the creative bit, you can get in. But to make a real success, and this is what I'd advise you to do, is that you need to have either you can choose to have a breadth of experience, so go across different functions, or you say, you know what, no, I am a content person at heart, because as like Soundari, I'm a storyteller at heart. If you're a storyteller at heart, and content maybe is the area that you should be really looking at, then you can develop depth. Just get into depth there and become a real expert at it, whether it's writing content for brands, whether it's writing content for services, whether it is writing content for established organizations. Then you become a content king or content queen. You become an expert there. The only advice that I would have for you is that you need to be willing as a marketer to be ready to try anything and be open to different kinds of organizations. And if you're somebody starting out in the marketing career, I would advise you, don't just look at big names. Look at smaller firms. I always believe, and actually not always believe, I now believe, now that I'm an entrepreneur, that small firms are able to give you the level of exposure and experience which you don't get in large firms, simply because small firms don't have the money to have so many people. So my secretary who joined me back in 2016, I got her on as a secretary because I needed somebody to book us, travel tickets, to do expense reimbursements, to do all the administrative work. She left us in end 2018. She left us to join Amazon. So there's no way I could, hold her back. But by that time, she knew how to operate WordPress, which was a platform on which the Sepalika website was sitting. Because why? Because I didn't have team. So they had to be either her or there's just me. There were the three of us at that time in the organization. So she learned how to upload articles. She learned how to analyze data. So we were running programs. And I said, we need to know what kind of results are we delivering? She said, and I don't even know what Excel spells like. And I taught her and she learned how to run Excel. So I feel that when you work for small organizations, the level of exposure that you get is fantastic. So if you want to succeed, my recommendation would be to look for organizations who are willing to give you work. Don't just go after big names.
You covered some of the very important aspects, and I'm sure this will be very helpful. There has been an outpour of questions coming in from our live audience, and we can't wait to read them for our panel speakers. We'll try taking 2 out of the lot for today. So our first question: marketing needs to market itself within the firm more widely to explain and justify its role and purpose. That is a very thought-provoking question that we received, and we are keen to know more. Soundari, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Vafika. Stephanie would have been so good at answering this. We're missing her. I'll try to give it a shot.
Yes.
And I must really thank Sharda and Stephanie. I'm making my notes, both on the story listening that Stephanie was talking about and about all the metrics and how social media works. As an entrepreneur, I've been making notes. So thank you, Sharda.
Stephanie is in the middle of a snowstorm, so
Yeah.
her router just went out. So she's really, really sorry. She just sent me a message, and she woke up at 4:30 to be a part of this panel. So she's really feeling bad, but we will definitely, reserve her insights for another time. But weather is weather, right? We all know that.
So I want to just look at it from a different angle. It's not just marketing which needs to market ourselves. All of us need to create a way in which we can influence action where we don't have any influence. And that's typically the marketing space, a HR space, or anything else in an organization. And how do you really help overcoming some of these entrenched views or, having to bat for yourself within an organization? And we say, and I'm going to go back to my storytelling thing, we say that you can't really beat any of these entrenched views with facts and arguments. You can only create a better narrative around it and influence action. So whether you're in marketing, whether you're in production, whether you're in technology, for you to create that movement, you need to create a connection with people, and you need to find a ingenuous way of going around it to make that connection. And it reminds me of the water rollers in India when the water wheels were introduced. Velo was the company which brought it on, and earlier, and women in the villages anywhere in India, they used to, this is a standard picture, right? If you think of a village person in the village, one pot on top of the head, one pot on the side, maybe one baby on the other side, and walking long distances, carrying heavy loads, heavy pots in your head, and balancing things and coming. And this was not only preventing the women from doing other things, it was also preventing girls from having careers, because it was considered this is what women had to do. And hence girls couldn't go to schools and they had to carry water and walk long distances. And the men and the boys weren't involved in this at all. So every time this water issue was brought, it was brought as a gender issue. There would be a lot of fights. No, this is not, men don't do it. And that's how it kept going on. And that was not solving the problem. Once they changed the design of how this water was being carried and made it into a wheel, it became a plaything. Everybody, all the boys in the village wanted to play with this water wheel. They wanted to push and run with it. It became a game. So sometimes when we look at problems, so be it marketing, be it technology, be it innovation, when we look at problems, if we look at it from a very obvious lens, we may not be able to solve it. We'll just be banging our heads against it. But creating this kind of machine, which removed the cultural baggage, which removed the gender baggage, it really helped people to get more women out of this rigorous role. And it also got girls back into schools. And I know that one of our friends in Jawhar village in Maharashtra, she's now currently working with these water wheels, and Sharda will also know through through our IM Women's Social Action Group. This is something which has really made a difference. So I think it's a message for anybody in any field, not just in marketing, about communicating your message, but creating an influence without creating those conflicts. Doing it in a very subtle way, but getting your work done.
Vafika, if you don't mind, can I add my real life experience on this topic, which is marketing should market itself. I have been at the receiving end of this statement, and this was many, many years ago. I used to work at Johnson & Johnson in the marketing team. And at that time, I remember, and it was not with just J&J, right? In most organizations, the marketing function is looked at as a cost center, because the marketing guys only seem to be spending monies. And I remember the thing was that you guys are, your life is good. You're just making ads. And I remember when I was at Coke, you're going to meet Amir Khan today, or you're meeting Akshay Kumar today, right? Your life is all about film stars, making ads, and really, and especially the sales guys, it's a really cushy life you guys have in marketing. And it really used to irk us, because for me, and for us at that time, and for me, marketing needs to be present in the boardroom. You need to have a sitting, you need to have a position at the table in the boardroom. You need to be taken more seriously. And that came about when, in the past, marketing always used to, when they presented results, we're always talking about how our ads did. We talked about our brand imagery. So, Johnson & Johnson, fantastic brand. Oh, Coke has now improved, narrowed the gap with Pepsi in terms of imagery. Oh, Thumbs Up has beaten Pepsi, or we've, bashed whatever, Mirinda. Now, when you leave it, it's not that image scores are unimportant. Of course they are. But, it's about what is it that you're presenting to the rest of the organization. You have to show how marketing has a role on top line, or it has a role on the bottom line. So we had to change the conversation from not just talking about our advertising or the brand imagery that resulted from marketing's efforts, but to show how we had a direct impact on market share, and to link that market share to sales, to show how marketing efforts were made to reduce advertising spends so that you improve the profitability of the brand, and to show how overall marketing could have a business impact beyond a marketing impact. So I firmly believe that for marketing to change or reposition itself as marketing, you've got to show how integral or how critical marketing is to business as a function.
Thank you, Sharda and Sondri, for the wonderful insight. The next question from our audience is, how to manage the reputation of your businesses during a pandemic? That is indeed very interesting. We have seen large brands trying to provide the same service despite adversity. Sharda, would you like to take this audience question?
It's really hard. It's very, very hard for brands to do this, because while consumers want brands to be nice to them, as a brand owner or as a business owner, I know how hard it is, because at the end of the day, we all need to pay salaries. Our businesses have got impacted. So how do you do things without hurting the consumer? So, for example, when all our programs at Cepalica always begin with a blood test. Now, at the height of the pandemic, we couldn't run blood tests because labs were shut. And therefore what we had to do was to actually give people a discount, even though it meant that we had to take a hit. Or people turned up and said, listen, it's lockdown. I know I'm at home, but I don't think I'm in a mental state to do your program. Can I pause my program and join back when I'm in a better frame of mind? Now, from their side, it's understandable. From my side, I'm like saying, this is going to throw my resources haywire. How do I do resource allocation internally? And I don't know when she's going to come back, because she's saying, I'll come back when I'm in a better frame of mind. When is that going to happen? However, if I say, no, I can't do that, because then my nutritionist is not going to have any work to do right now. And then later on, when new consumers come, you're going to come in and, disturb her, she'll be overburdened. I can't do that. So you'll have to take a price internally so that you're able to meet consumer needs. Otherwise, your reputation can get hit. And I remember some brands have done a fantastic job during the pandemic. I'm sure all of us know what Taj Hotels did. The hospitality industry was biggest hit. And yet the Taj opened its doors to medical fraternity, allowing doctors and people from the medical community to stay in their hotels free. And what great, not, I won't say brownie points, but what a reputation advantage they got by just doing that. How large-hearted did they come across to all of us? The Four Seasons Hotel did the same thing in New York. I still remember Uber, when this whole thing started, released a campaign in the US, say that, stop riding with us. Don't ride with us. That was their advertising. And even though they were hit, by saying this, you knew that you would want, people had won Uber's loyalty. So even though it was going to hurt them, they said, please don't ride with us. Uber also has a business called Uber Eats. So it's like your Swiggy and Zomato. And what they did was they waived off the delivery charges to restaurants around that time. And then, so these are examples where you're trying to build a great reputation during the pandemic. So even though it is, it may hit you as an organization financially, as a small organization, you still may need to go out and do this to protect your reputation. On the other hand, I have seen brands with taking blatant advantage of the pandemic. So there was, I think, one suiting brand which launched antibacterial business suits. And the ad they showed was of a guy wearing a suit with a stroller. It was an airport kind of scene. I'm saying that, how ridiculous this sounds. In May, height of the pandemic, A, who's going to travel and go step out? B, who's going to believe that suddenly, and remember, this is peak of panic, who's going to believe that a suit can keep away the coronavirus? So think about it, guys. Don't ridiculously or thoughtlessly try and take advantage of people or a vulnerable situation. People when they're vulnerable, don't do that, because it really damages your reputation. So it's critical, and businesses will have to incur short-term losses so that they can protect their reputation for the longer term.
Thank you, Sharda. That was a wonderful insight. We had a very thought-provoking and inspiring session with our panel members from across the globe. You shared insights very impactfully and practically, leaving us all very inspired. We are grateful to you for your time. Thank you all once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great pleasure listening to you all. Amazing stories, real life experience, and the golden tips that you all have given the students to embrace in their career. On behalf of the entire VTU family, I profusely thank the panelists for today